That was me on my phone.
Mic check 1 2.
Okay, great. Well, good afternoon. We've taken a little bit of a hiatus, but I did want to bring an update on the coronavirus in Wyoming and our progress. There are 866 lab-confirmed positive cases. 10 of those were today. That's 106 over the last week. That's twice what we did the first week of June. There are 223 probable cases, 1,089 cases total. Probable and recovered, 852. Those are people who have recovered. What that means is, sadly, we are trending higher with 237 active cases. It seems to me not long ago we were under 200, and that makes me sad because we are now spiking, and compared with a number of the others that are spiking. But on the good side, there are only 7 hospitalized, 8 if you count the one that was from Montana that was has gone up. There are 18 deaths. Our ability to maintain progress is dependent on the good people of Wyoming. And during this press conference, I'll tell you kind of where I've been over this past week, trying to get a sense of what people are doing around the state. I'm a cowboy by background, and I know when the grass is green, horses are fresh, we all want to run out in the pasture and buck. This is a time we do not want to run away. This is a time when we want to mind our P's and Q's. And if we look at what's happened in Uintah County, where we've had a number of cases, 80 cases, we see the spiking there, and we see it mostly in the younger age groups. And I think this talks a little bit about the carelessness and the recklessness and sometimes the thoughtlessness that can mean that we'll lose ground. Over the last week, I've been in many parts of the state talking to industries, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And all of those industries are worried about their productivity going down, our tax dollars being compromised if people are careless and reckless and don't mind and don't exercise the personal responsibility that you, the people of Wyoming, have done so well. I'm excited to say that the Cody Night Rodeo is going to go on the 20th. I just talked to some of the board members up there. Cody Stampede is trying to get going. We need Wyoming to be the safe place, not the place that's spiking on national news, but the place that is safe to go to, where people act responsibly and do the right thing. That will continue to see what we're going to talk about a little later in this news conference as well. Tourism numbers continuing to improve, sales tax revenues continuing to improve, and the challenges that we see in Wyoming with our budget somewhat mitigated by the fact that we are a place that people from Colorado are coming, people from out of state are coming. They're wanting to be here because the people of Wyoming, the good people of Wyoming, know how to exercise restraint, know how to behave responsibly. You know, it's really important to me that little rodeos from Du Bois to Ten Sleep to the Hewlett Rodeo I was at this week can go forward. And we can do that because you all have done the right thing. I really am anxious, and I know Dr. Harris has spoken about it too, that we continue to make our progress, that we do not lose ground, and that we continue as we go into the summer, just like our horses do. They settle down, they understand the good weather and the good grass, but they settle down and become the good working animals that we want them to be. It is important that we remember to mind our P's and Q's and be responsible. It's the reason why when Christy Nome calls me and says, I want to go antelope hunting this fall, you guys are doing all the right things that I can say, thank you, Madam Governor. Appreciate the compliment. People in Wyoming know how to do the right thing. They know how to do it the right way, and they do it the right way. And with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Harris, who has a couple of words to say. Thank you, Dr. Harris.
Thank you, Governor Gordon. While we see signs of optimism for Wyoming overall when it comes to COVID-19 and our ability to respond, unfortunately, we also continue to see more cases. There was a particular increase over the last week in multiple counties, and we have changed new cases to concerning on our current metric document. There have been surges in other states as well, including some neighbors. Much, but not all, of Wyoming's recent activity has been in Uinta County. The case count more than doubled over 2 weeks, going from 35 on June 1st to 80 today. Many of the new cases there appear to be connected to a particular gathering at a public location where social distancing rules were not taken seriously. People exposed at the gathering then spread the virus to others who were not there. Current cases include some healthcare workers, which can have multiple unintended effects. This situation illustrates how it doesn't take much to really change the disease picture within a community. We've also seen examples in other locations of one person spreading the virus among several coworkers. Depending on the size and nature of the employer, a few sick workers or many sick workers can have potentially devastating effects on the businesses we count on in Wyoming for jobs and for services. This disease has not gone away, so please think of others when you make choices. We've eased restrictions for some gatherings, such as for religious services and parades, but we strongly recommend social distancing still be applied in those situations. We've clearly seen examples of transmission from people without symptoms to others. You simply can't tell for sure whether you or someone around you may be infected. That's why it's important to follow our common sense recommendations for social distancing and for face coverings in situations when it's difficult to keep apart. If you are told that you've been exposed to the illness, please respect the directions of public health authorities so you don't make the situation worse for others. You may receive an isolation order or a quarantine order. Isolation orders are generally issued for people who are known to have a disease, while quarantine orders are intended for people who have been exposed to a disease. If you receive a personal public health order, it is important to follow the requirements. Isolation and quarantine orders are one of our most important strategies to help limit the spread of a disease and to help prevent the infection of vulnerable individuals, especially as we continue to ease restrictions. And of course, if you find you have symptoms consistent with COVID-19, stay home and away from others unless you need medical care, and ask a medical professional if you should get tested. Finally, I want to mention updated guidance sent late last week to long-term care facilities across the state. All along, we have been focused on protecting the residents of nursing homes and assisted living facilities because they are our most vulnerable citizens. Outbreaks in facilities can be difficult to manage and can be devastating. I believe the staff working in these facilities have all had a particularly difficult burden over the last few months. I consider them to be heroes. We are encouraging Wyoming's long-term care facilities to mostly continue the same practices and restrictions they've had in place the last few months. At the same time, we realize how hard it has been for many family members to be kept apart. The new guidance offers an option for limited outdoor in-person visits. Not every facility may be comfortable offering this option, and local conditions should be considered. However, this small change can be viewed as one of the signs of optimism I mentioned earlier that I see for Wyoming and this pandemic. Thank you, Governor.
Thanks, Dr. Harris. I want to turn a little bit to tourism. I had the opportunity to go around the state quite a bit this week, and I have to say the number of motor coaches and RVs that are on the road and the number of those that are new is really outstanding. And I'm happy to say that whether it be Rock Springs or Hewlett or Buffalo or Goshen County, people are reporting that their sales tax revenues are stronger than they expected. And I think that speaks to the fact that our tourism economy is rebounding. I've spoken to you about the great success we had opening 2 weeks before any other state, our national park, Yellowstone, and also Grand Teton. And the fact that there were only 200 fewer cars in that Memorial Day weekend than there were the year ahead. We still see visitation running between 72 and 75%. My friend Ted Blair and Cody, I've talked to him, although he is not seeing the occupancy in the hotels that he would like to see. We are seeing a tremendous number of these RVs that are going out camping. In fact, 8 of our state parks saw an increase in April and May from 225,000 visits last year to 577,000 visits this year. That's a 2.5% increase over the 5-year average. Wyoming is the place to come. They're coming, our visitors, they're spending money, they're doing business in our shops, and it's essential that we continue to have a safe place for them to come. Trend is expected to continue through the summer. As I said, motorhomes sales are 600% increase, and people that I've heard about that have friends of mine that have taken their old trailer house in to be fixed have had offers openly on just as they've walked on the sales ground. This is really important for our revenues and for the fact that we have the opportunity now to build Wyoming in tourist eyes really across the state, not just in the northwest corner. As I said, rodeos are starting. They've had really remarkable success. We're excited that the Thunderbirds are coming, worked hard to get that. We're starting to see more and more of these events that are kind of coming forward, and really excited that that's happening. And it's important that we continue this progress so we can continue to open the state, continue to make sure it's open, and continue to have the kind of summer that we all want to have. Softball's being played here up in Campbell County. Tournaments are coming from Colorado. And so we're starting to see really actually more activity than we have maybe seen in the past. Let me turn now a little bit to our schools for the fall. We've been active working on how to make sure we have our schools open. I just forwarded on to the Attorney General a $26.5 million CARES funding plan that UW has put forward to open the school for this fall for students being on campus and making sure that we regain that. We're working with community colleges to make sure those are there, and with school districts. Some school districts are a little slower to the start, but we know that in a couple of months we're going to start seeing our schools opening, and we need to make sure that our plans are approved, correct, and ready to go, and that we understand what the challenges are going to be. We've made sure that funding is available for students and staff, for PPE and other supplies. And so I really feel that our educational opportunities this fall will continue to go forward. When it comes to business activity in the state, we had our special session. It allowed for the governor to make some big changes in how the CARES Act is put forward. We've been working very closely with the legislature, and I'm happy to say that the Business Interruption Stipend Program, the very first of that, sent out its first checks last week. There are 2,709 applications. $22.3 million are committed, and $3 million is paid out at this point. I want to say that $9 million of that is committed to restaurants and bars to make sure that they have the opportunity to pay their employees when they're staffed down because of the spacing requirements. And I know this is very frustrating when you've got a line of people outside your business and you've got some empty tables. It's got to be frustrating. You want to have that in there, but it's really, again, no one wants to have that bar or that restaurant that we can say that's where this spike occurred. So working together, we're trying to support these businesses. It's nice to have the demand there. And as I say, Wyoming really is the place that a lot of people are coming to. We're starting to see real estate prices to uptick, and I'm very excited about all of that. I want to also say that WCDA is approving payments for the Emergency Housing and Assistance Program. This first payments will be going out next week. And that, as you know, is one of the programs we had to make sure that people were able to meet their mortgage payment opportunities and rent payments. So that's getting going. We're accepting applications at WCDA for anyone seeking rent or mortgage assistance. Next week, we'll start bringing more and more of our state workers back. We've found out over the last couple of months that many of our workers can work from home, and so we're working on a staggered way of bringing some of them back, making them more available to the public, and being able to meet the needs of the state and the people of Wyoming with our state employees. So that process is working. We've been designing spacing and safety requirements for that. PPE also involved. So I'm very excited about all that as well. And last week, when we didn't have a press conference, I took the opportunity to visit Lander, run down through the Red Desert for the great opportunities that are there for tourism and recreation. We met with oil and gas companies, spent some time with Rocky Mountain Power talking about their plans, wanted to make sure they understood how important coal was to Wyoming and how important carbon capture and sequestration is. We met with trona companies, met with grazers on the Red Desert. Took a look at wildlife projects on Little Mountain and elsewhere, and had an opportunity to meet with the county commissioners of Sweetwater County and also with a delegation, members from both the Senate and House, from Lincoln County and from Sweetwater County, and had a really good, robust conversation about how we get the state continuing to move forward, the challenges we have with budget reductions, and what we intend to do. Very helpful conversation. As I say, it was exciting to hear that even Sweetwater is seeing the kinds of sales tax revenues that nobody expected to see. So it does indicate that people are coming through, people are traveling, people are visiting Sweetwater, and I really encourage them to get up in the Red Desert and see some of the wonderful stuff that is up there. On Friday and Saturday, I made a trip up to my ranch and then out to Hewlett, stopping in Moorcroft, and in Hewlett, met with Nyman Mills, kind of talking about the Black Hills Forest, some of the challenges that we're seeing there with the new forest plans, just like we had with the Ashley Forest down in Sweetwater County. Attended the rodeo on Sunday. It was exciting to see people out rodeoing again. Livestock, as I said, the horses were fresh. The bucking was terrific. The breakaway roping was fantastic. Had a chance to visit with the Life Flight folks and the ambulance services that were up there, as well as some other people in the town. Hewlett is getting hopefully ready for an exciting summer. Good stuff. It was a nice way to kick off the summer. And then yesterday, I went up and visited the Lusk Women's Correctional Facility, and then the medium security correctional facility in Torrington. Took a tour of St. Joseph's and had a good long talk with the Goshen Irrigation District. And the reason I bring all of this up is that all of the things that we've been worried about in Wyoming over the last year have still been ticking along. And it's important that as we get back to work, that we understand those challenges are still there. Wyoming still faces the same opportunities. And I'm working every day. My staff is working every day to make sure that Wyoming has a bright future. I did want to it was nice today to get a bumper sticker from a dear friend that was on the Kansas City Federal Reserve. This bumper says, "Make it in the USA." The man who sent this to me built the first large drag line in Wyoming. It was his first project. He was an immigrant from India and has built a phenomenal corporation headquartered in Oklahoma. If there is ever anybody who believes in the American dream, in the fact that if we take responsibility, if we are enterprising, if we want to do the best we can for our family and for our country, right here in the USA, we have all those opportunities, and they are right here with us in Wyoming as well. So lastly, before we take some questions, let me say, look, I get it. It's frustrating to wear face masks, I know. I still find it a little bit awkward. But I know it's doing a good job for those people that are around me. I know I'm taking care of them. And when I'm outdoors in different parts, we have 8 counties in Wyoming that have no cases of COVID-19. I hope it stays that way. I'm respectful of that. But we need to remember, these are the things that we can do to be responsible. These are the things to do that can still make us the state with the best ratio. We have the lowest unemployment and one of the lowest rates of infection and one of the lowest rates of death. And that's because of what you've done. I hope you continue to do that. Don't be careless. Be thoughtful. Remember, we have a great summer ahead of us. And if we are the people that I believe we are, we will come through this in flying colors. And we will be the place that is the envy of the nation. God bless you, and I'll be glad to take some questions.
Governor Gordon, this is Mark Bentley in Buffalo.
Hi, Mark.
What would it look like as far as the increase in cases or a spike in cases for you to go back and reinstitute some of the restrictions?
Well, Mark, let me say I hope we don't have to do that. You know, some states, Utah, for example, now are thinking about reinstituting some of those things. You know, Dr. Harris and I have not talked about this, largely because I believe the people of Wyoming won't be so stupid as to put us in that kind of a quandary. But I think we would just walk back the orders the way we've tried to loosen them. We've done this on a scientific basis right from the start. We're looking at the evidence as we go. As I say, and Dr. Harris spoke to this, we're still very optimistic about where Wyoming is going, and we want to see it continue. You know, we had Memorial Day, the first couple of days of the summer, beautiful weather, great opportunities, and people do kind of feel a little frisky. And now I'm hoping that people will remember. And you know, believe me, Mark, when I was in Sweetwater, when I was up in Hewlett, people were respectful. And they were thoughtful about things like social spacing and social distancing. Thanks. Next question.
Thank you.
Governor, this is Andrew with Wildfire. I'll ask a question to Dr. Harris, if that's okay.
That's perfect. Thanks.
Okay. Doctor, the deaths in Wyoming, there's been a really high proportion of those that are members of the Northern Arapaho tribe. To what extent is the state working with the tribe to help them combat this virus? Kind of what, I guess, yeah, that's my question.
Sure, thank you for that question. I will say the Northern Arapaho and Eastern Shoshone tribes are intensively responding to this outbreak. They are doing aggressive and thorough contact tracing, expanding testing for anyone who needs it, and it has been really an honor to be able to work with them. We do provide technical assistance in that contact tracing. We have an epidemiologist at the Department of Health who is assigned to work with both tribes to provide guidance doing that and provide whatever assistance is needed. Our laboratory is running tests for both the tribes. So again, we appreciate all of the hard work that they're doing and appreciate being able to partner with them in these efforts.
Or, if you can, this gathering in New Winter County that some of these cases trace back to? Was it, like a young people, a party of some kind, or what was that?
I think I missed a little bit of your question, but I think the question was it young people from... Yeah. I don't have all of the details, but yes, my understanding that it was young people gathering in sort of a celebratory way, and just weren't following the recommendations for social distancing that both us and the venue had put in place. And unfortunately, it as I said in my comments, did not only affect people who were there, but now has affected essentially a second generation of people that were exposed there, then exposed within the community.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And just not to put too fine a point on it, but we've been able to allow some outside visitation with seniors, and I know from personal experience of people who are really grateful that they're able to see their parents who are maybe in assisted living or long-term care, and how important it is. And if we don't all work together, we risk losing those opportunities, and we know that isolation is such a challenge and particularly difficult. I know two recent situations where people have improved when they've been able to see their families, and so we want to keep that progress working. Next question.
Hi, Governor. Jim O'Reilly from Big 99 Radio.
Hi, Jim.
I have a question for you and for Dr. Harris. The question for you, sir, can you address the tension contained in the contents of the early portion of your state between sort of a cautionary tale for state residents to regulate their behavior to keep the virus down versus the call for increased tourism? I mean, there's a bit of tension there between those, if you understand my point. Then I have a question for Dr. Harris as well.
Sure. So if I understood, you're breaking up a little bit, Jim, but I think your question was if I'm, recommending that people respect and behave and do the right things in Wyoming, continue to have Wyoming as a safe place to come, and at the same time encouraging tourism. How does that work? There's a tension there, and I acknowledge that. But on the other hand, what I would say is that so much of our tourism industry is really dependent on the next several months, particularly in the summer months, and then we'll have hunting season after that. And as we see, as I have seen, restaurants that are doing the right thing, their wait staff have masks on, they're very thoughtful about how they do the spacing and so on. We know we can do this safely. And again, the example of just being careful and thoughtful and providing an example of behavior. And I'm finding that a lot of tourists are coming by the Capitol here and saying, this is a place that people just act sensibly. We wanted to come here because we're all locked down in our state. You guys are open, but you're not acting like idiots. You're doing the right thing. And so I think that there's a balance there that we found, and I want to see it continue. I think it's good, when I look at places like Saratoga, obviously you've been dealing with a lot of fishermen coming up. Hopefully they're behaving themselves, and so it continues to bring the business that so much of Wyoming really depends on, the restaurants and the bars having the opportunity to kind of collect that. So thanks for that question. It's a tension, but I think we're doing it about the right way. And the other thing I would say, Jim, is that people are traveling anyway. Before Yellowstone Park opened up, my son, who lives up in Bozeman, was saying they're just seeing a tremendous number of cars showing up. And so I think embracing it and showing how to do it the right way is the correct way. So with that, I'll give Dr. Harris.
My question for Dr. Harris is the recent uptick in cases, positive lab confirmed cases. How much does that have to do with testing? And when I look at the grand total of testing numbers, it's over 34,000 now of confirmed cases. Can you, is that 34,000 people that have been tested, or have some people been tested more than once? And can you talk to how many people have been tested and how many people under the age of 18 have been tested?
Thank you for those questions. I don't have all those numbers with me. We can certainly get them to you. I believe the 35,000 is the total tests that have been conducted, and so some of those could potentially be duplicates. However, I would, the number is still in the tens of thousands in terms of Wyoming residents that have been tested. But I will clarify that, certainly we've seen, and we have this on our website, the number of tests run per day by both the Wyoming Public Health Laboratory as well as reference laboratories. And that number, of course, has increased since the start of the outbreak, which is very important for us to be able to detect cases so we can implement control measures like isolation and quarantine. But the increased number of cases that we're detecting is a result that there is transmission within our communities, and increased number of cases as well. So we can't use just increased amounts of testing as an explanation for all of the cases that we are detecting.
Can you address how many children under the age of 18 have tested positive for the virus?
Yep, and we have those numbers on our website as well. Again, I don't have the exact percentages here, but in terms of percent of cases that are under the age of 18, that is on our website. You will see a difference in the national numbers between our numbers. Our percent of cases that are people or children less than 18 is greater than the national number by quite a bit, and I think that represents our essentially greater ability to do expanded testing and make sure that we're testing everybody who has compatible symptoms, as well as everybody who might be a contact as much as possible of somebody with symptoms. So I think that our sort of higher percentage of cases are under 18 are a result of our ability to just test a greater percent of the population and a greater reach within the population than some other places may be able to.
Thank you.
Governor Gordon, it's Barbara Ann from the Bighorn County newspapers.
Hi, Barbara Ann. Good to hear your voice.
Back at ya. I was wondering, and I believe that you know, that the Basin Area Chamber started a Wyoming Staycation Facebook page with the intent of getting places throughout Wyoming, whether they be lodging facilities or museums or whatever, to post on there. And the goal is to encourage people to go stay at the places where normally they would be full with tourists from out of the country and whatnot. Do you know if there is any way that the Wyoming Office of Tourism or the lodging group and that is also going to focus some of their advertising towards getting people to support Wyoming people by doing a vacation in our own backyard?
Barbara Ann, that's a great question, and thank you very much for that. That Wyoming Staycation Facebook page is terrific. As you know, that's been one of my major pushes. We need to pivot. It is terrific that we have Yellowstone and we have Grand Teton. It's wonderful that we have Devil's Tower, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff in Wyoming, as you know, places in Bighorn County with the Bighorn Coalition doing such a great job with off-road vehicles and trails and mountain biking and opportunities to do stuff. We're really trying to pivot so that Wyoming tourism, with its somewhat limited budget, but that they are able to cover all of the great treasures that we have in this state. And I know you've been a big proponent of being able to build that momentum. Believe me, we're on that page too. That was one reason I went down through, the Oregon Buttes, Honeycomb Buttes, Jack Morrow Hills, and just the stories, the history of Wyoming and the opportunities that really are there that have not been properly, well, I won't say properly, but haven't been as developed as they should be. So thanks for that, and yes, we're working on making sure that we get more broad representation to the state.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. So I'm thinking, oh yeah, go ahead.
Governor, Andrew with Wildfire here. If you don't mind, a question that's not directly about COVID. Yesterday, the Supreme Court ruled that LGBTQ Americans are legally protected from employment discrimination. That's an issue that's been debated by the Wyoming legislature, and they've so far declined to put such protections in statute. Do you have any comment on yesterday's ruling and what it means for the state? And would you support state statute to put that, the intent of that ruling into law here?
Sure, Andrew. Thanks for that. And even when I was running, I talked about our Constitution really guaranteeing rights broadly. Every citizen has the same opportunities, and I resisted calls at the time running for putting something in legislation because I didn't think it was necessary. At this point, this is the law of the land, and I think Wyoming is. Our Constitution already guarantees it, so I think it fits within our framework, and we'll certainly respect the law of the land.
Thanks. The ruling does seem to only apply to employment, so kind of it doesn't cover discrimination in other areas of life, like housing or banking, things like that. What about statute going that way, kind of expanding on the ruling?
And Andrew, again, I come back and talk about our constitutional programs, and I know people have said, well, yeah, but you don't have teeth in the Constitution. I think that the Constitution is the supreme document. But this will be up to the legislature to look at that. I look forward to the debate, and certainly am hopeful that it's a robust and useful debate. No one should be discriminated against. Nobody should be turned out of their house. This is Wyoming. We should fully recognize what our Constitution says.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Well, hearing none, again, thank you very much for tuning in, and really appreciate your attention. Thank you to the media outlets that are here. You are such an important part of disseminating this message across the state. One reason I'm getting out and getting around the state more, and so is the First Lady, is because we really want to make sure that we engage right on the ground. But it starts with you. The way you disseminate this news is absolutely critical. And the news this week is let's not be foolish. Let's not lose the ground we've gained. It's great that we have spring. It's great that we can feel good and be out and enjoy water sports, enjoy fishing, enjoy rodeo, enjoy just wonderful Wyoming. But it is also a time when we don't want to risk that. And so yeah, we hope that for things like face masks will go the way in time, but for the time being, they're critical. They're critical to protect our most vulnerable populations. And, having known a couple of people that have gotten coronavirus and it wasn't easy for them, it's important that we respect each other. So thank you. God bless Wyoming. God bless the United States of America. And may you have a wonderful summer. Thanks.